Hello again, it's Miss Jones from Sew with Miss Jones. Today I'm going to show you how to thread a needle and tie a knot and learn to do the back stitch. You are going to need a pencil to mark the seam line, a seam gauge if you have one, or your little ruler, some thread. I'm using yellow so you can see it against this purple. When I put mine together, I'm going to use my purple thread. I have my needle threader and I have my needle. Now, I highly recommend that you not lose this needle. Do the best you can not to, and never lay it down on the table, even if it's threaded. Always make sure you stick it in the fabric somewhere so you don't lose it. Now, the first thing that I did, and I did this off camera, was just like on the apron, I measured out the seam allowance and at 5/8 of an inch, and then drew a line with my pencil. So I'm done with that. I need a few pins because I want to pin this edge along here. And you might need 3. I am only going to use 2. Now, how big a sample do you need to do? I recommend that you do at least 3 inches. This one's more like 4.5, but I'm going to stitch at least 3 inches on here, because I want you to practice enough that you are comfortable with the stitch and that you won't, it will work well for you, okay? So I have my thread. I am going to put the spool in my hand, and then I'm going to reach, so the spool's in my hand, I'm going to reach the thread all the way up to my shoulder, and I'm going to cut the thread here. For this one, we actually are going to use a double thread. So you don't tie the needle onto the thread to keep it from coming undone. We're actually going to tie the 2 ends together. So to use a needle threader, and you have to be careful because these things aren't real strong, and if you are too mean to it, it'll fall apart. So I am going to take my needle and stick the needle threader through there so that you have that loop, and then take the end of the thread and stick it through the loop. It doesn't have to be real long, but make sure it's 3 or 4 inches long, and then you are going to gently pop this through. Put this back in your kit so you don't lose it, and now your needle is threaded. We're going to find the 2 ends and even them up, okay? And we're going to do what is called a quilter's knot. Now, this is the one I'm going to show you. If this is difficult for you, figure out any knot you can to put on the bottom here. It just has to be big enough that it won't pop through the thread. So for a quilter's knot, what you do is you take your needle between your thumb and your pointer finger with the point out, and I have my thread underneath my thumb. I'm going to wrap it around 1, 2, 3 times, and then with my left hand I'm going to carefully pull that out. I'm still pushing down on that thread so that it's making a loop, and I'm going to take it all the way down to the bottom, and it made a knot. Now, I don't want this long tail on here, so I'm going to clip part of that off. So I've got about 1/8 of an inch left. Okay, if you didn't get that the first time, just back up this video and watch it again. So, because I'm right-handed, I am going to go from right to left. I like to hold the big part towards me, but some people like to do this instead. I just like to have a little more to grip with. So what we're going to do is, because this is totally going to be on the inside, it does not matter whether your knot is on the bottom or on the top, and I'm just going to take a little stitch. You want these stitches to be kind of small, because if you don't make them small, then your pocket's going to fall apart. And this is the stitch we're going to use to make our pocket. So you're going to come back to where the knot came out and go a little bit ahead, like about 1/8 of an inch. And this first stitch is way too big, but I'm not going to take it out because this is just practice. And one of the reasons why we practice is because we want to make sure that we become comfortable with the stitch and we can do it really easily. Okay, so a back stitch. I'm going from right to left, but my stitches, every time I take a stitch, I go backwards a little bit. So my thread is here. I'm going to go back right to where that one started, or ended rather, and then I'm going to go a little bit ahead of where the thread goes out. Okay. And I really don't need this pin anymore, so I'm going to get rid of it because it's in my way. So again, I'm going to go back a little bit so that I'm touching that previous stitch. I'm going to go down and up, kind of like a dolphin swims, like up and down, okay? But I'm going to go a little bit ahead of where my thread comes out. Back to the other stitch, and then a little bit ahead. My stitches are getting a little smaller, which is good. They also look a little slanted, and I think that's because I'm standing funny while I'm trying to do this. Yeah, these are getting to be a better size. They're more like 1/8 of an inch. So why do they have to be so tiny? Well, if you don't make them tiny, then you could have holes in the sides of your pockets. So back a little bit and forward. And I will tell you, if I could get completely around here, this would be a whole lot easier to do. Now, if you notice, I have a little bubble right there. I don't want to yank too hard. I'm just going to slide my fingers along the thread to get that undone. And the other thing is, when you pull these stitches, you don't want to pull hard and make this puckered. You want to just pull it until it is flat. So back to the beginning or the end of the previous stitch, a little bit ahead with that one. So how small should these be? Well, I did a pillow project not too long ago by hand, and I think I had either 10 or 12 stitches per inch. That's pretty small. But if you can get about 5 per inch, that's probably pretty good for somebody who's new at this. If you can make them smaller than that, woohoo! All right, so back to the beginning, down and up. So the thread is always in the middle, and pull it flat. And if you notice, I always leave my thread up that way. I don't think it really matters, but it just makes them consistent. Down and up. And again, don't pull this too tight. We don't want this to pucker. So let's pretend that I have stitched all the way around my pocket, or I'm running out of thread. I've only got about 4 inches left. And so what I'm going to do is, instead of going in and then out again, I'm just going to go straight down to the back here. And then I'm going to flip it over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go underneath that last stitch. I'm not going all the way to the other side. I'm just going underneath that last stitch. And then I'm going to grab onto this loop because I don't want it to get all tangled. And I'm going to go through it once, through it twice, and then I'm going to pull this through, and it should be just about like that. And wow, I have a little loop there. You know what? It's going to be on the inside. Nobody's going to see it. It'll be okay as long as there is a knot there. And then I'm going to take my thread and clip it off so I only have about 1/8 of an inch left. Remember, don't ever lay your needle down on anything. Just put it back into your fabric, and from there you won't lose it. This one is a really good one because it's got a big eye, which means that it's easier to thread. You need to do yours at least 3 inches. I know I didn't do quite 3 inches, but you don't need to see me watch sew all of that. Practice, practice, practice. I need to see your practice before you start on your project. Bye for now.